Welcome, Age of Vintage Society. Ginger Rogers was the Academy Award-winning actress who danced her way into the hearts of Americans across the country during the Great Depression and proudly went toe-to-toe with Fred Astaire. How Ginger Rogers and Fred Astaire really felt for each other. Make sure to watch the video until the end and leave your thoughts in the comments. If you are new here, join our wonderful community by subscribing to the Age of Vintage channel. Ginger Rogers, old Hollywood's dancing queen. The tarnished truth beneath Hollywood's golden age glitter. Hollywood stars led lives of bed-hopping and partying. They had same-sex affairs and courted scandal even as they swanned down the red carpet at Oscar ceremonies. At the same time, the American public lapped up every detail of their lives and worshipped them through the tabloid press. A natural-born mimic, ham, tease, hard worker, stoic follower, and out-of-reach babe, Ginger Rogers has proven one of the most difficult to define of all the 1930s Hollywood stars. At her best, she was a synonym for fun and high spirits, while also conveying a dignified and sceptical kind of resistance to other people, and those contradictory impulses made her one of the most special and ambiguous performers of her time. Rogers excelled in her first 7 musicals with Fred Astaire and in several of her comedy vehicles, and even in some of the programs she churned out in the early 1930s. She was beloved, and rightly so. Wholesome but sexy, forthright and vulnerable, honest and energetic, Ginger Rogers was one of Hollywood's biggest stars of the 30s and 40s. Not a great actress, as she was always the first to admit. She could handle both comedy and drama capably as well as sing and dance, and if her range was not as great as some of her contemporaries, her appeal and glamour were more down-to-earth than other screen heroines, and thus easier to identify with. She would be remembered with affection now, even if she had never danced with Fred Astaire. It is because she did, though, that she will have a special place in film history, a place that elevates her above many other actresses of the period, just as popular and possibly more talented. Astaire and Rogers were and are quite simply the most famous dance team of all time. Why Fred Astaire fought so hard against Fred and Ginger. Like Antony and Cleopatra, Nureyev and Fontaine, or Bogart and Bacall, Fred and Ginger go together. You rarely hear Astaire's name without that of Ginger Rogers, the woman who quipped that she did everything he did, except backwards and in high heels. His famous partnership with Ginger Rogers might not have got beyond the first movie they shot together, 1933's Flying Down to Rio. In a letter that Astaire sent to his Hollywood agent, Leland Hayward, in 1934, he wrote, "What's all this talk about me being teamed with Ginger Rogers? I will not have it, Leland. I did not go into pictures to be teamed with her or anyone else, and if that is the program in mind for me, I will not stand for it." What lay behind Astaire's irritation at having his name tied to hers? On screen they appeared besotted with each other, but Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers were consumed by conflict, envy and mistrust. The 1988 Democratic Party National Convention, Texas State Treasurer Ann Richards delivered a groundbreaking speech which highlighted the poor representation of women in politics. "If you give us a chance, we can perform," she said. After all, Ginger Rogers did everything that Fred Astaire did. She just did it backwards and in high heels. She was almost right. The immortal dance partnership of Astaire and Rogers was the perfect example of professional compromise. This amusing observation is also perceptive, for what set Ginger Rogers apart, beyond her radiant, athletic, all-American look, was her unbending determination to succeed in an industry dominated by men. Not surprisingly, Astaire was a perfectionist. He once confided that most of his other female partners would, at some point or other, break down crying at the difficulty of a routine, but he quickly added, "Not Ginger. Never Ginger." Rogers was as shrewd as she was tough. By the time musicals fell out of favour at the end of the 30s, she had already seen the future and established herself as a first-rate actress and comedienne. She did not need Fred to shine on her own, and no hoofing required. Thankfully, Fred felt the same way about Ginger. Their mutual desire for independence after a slew of pictures caused speculation that the two did not get along. While they were never close friends off screen, they were more than cordial and maintained enormous respect for each other. Rogers would never have thought of herself as a feminist, but her life story suggests otherwise. Ginger was born Virginia Catherine McMath on 16th of July 1911 in Independence, Missouri, but she quickly became known as Ginger when one of her young cousins had difficulty pronouncing her first name. Rogers was the surname of her mother's second husband. Ginger's mother, Leela, had always been attracted to show business, and when Ginger was 5, she was left with her grandparents in Kansas City, while Leila went to Hollywood to pursue a writing career providing scripts, as Leila Lybrand, for silent stars such as Theda Bara. A natural song and dance performer, she started in vaudeville at age 15. A little over 3 years later she was cast in Girl Crazy, a hit Gershwin musical on Broadway, where she first met Astaire and introduced the hit tune Embraceable You. When she was finally paired with Fred on film in Flying Down to Rio, she'd already scored in 42nd Street, where she first sang the immortal Depression anthem We're in the Money. She'd already appeared in over 20 films. He'd only done one. Tellingly, this was the only Astaire-Rogers film where she got higher billing than Fred. Although Astaire continued to make movies and record, he was never to shine quite as brightly as he did when whirling Rogers in his arms. Rogers, on the other hand, won a Best Actress Oscar for the 1940 film Kitty Foyle. Astaire's only Oscar was an honorary one in 1950. The major problem was Astaire's ego and insecurity. He hated being considered a partner rather than a star. His demands in the pursuit of perfection also went beyond normal. Rogers recalls her feet bleeding after rehearsals. If he got an idea for a new routine or a change, he would call at any time of day or night to explain it and get her into rehearsal as early as 5 a.m. "How do you think those routines were accomplished?" said Rogers during one interview. "With mirrors? Well, I thought I knew what concentrated work was before I met Fred, but he's the limit." Never satisfied until everything is right, and he will do films in which they portray the romantic couple, it is impossible to discern the truth. They didn't much like one another. Like Cheese and Pickle or The Horse and the Carriage, Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers were made for each other. In the eyes of their adoring public, they were the ultimate dance partners, so perfectly attuned to each other that they could dance with their eyes closed faster and more graciously than the onlooker's eye could follow. On screen they were immaculate, poetry in motion. Off screen it was a stormy relationship, beginning with a barely acknowledged romance before morphing into a professional partnership spiced up by a subtle rivalry. "We had fun and it shows," said Rogers later in life. "True, we were never bosom buddies off the screen. We were different people with different interests. We were only a couple on film." Astaire was the perfectionist's perfectionist. He had begun his career dancing with his older sister Adele, whom he adored. Although he was a natural scene stealer, he was perfectly happy to be considered one of a duo as long as it was with his beloved sibling. Ginger Rogers was a poor substitute for Adele in his mind. His ambitions were for a solo career, not as part of a team. Katharine Hepburn remarked that to the Fred and Ginger partnership. Ginger brought sex and Fred brought class. And while Astaire partnered several dancers who were better than Rogers, including Eleanor Powell, Rita Hayworth and Sid Charisse, about whom he said, "When you dance with her, you stay danced," none recreated the extraordinary alchemy of the Fred and Ginger combo. Yet after making their films they separated, never again to be reconciled as a professional dance partnership. Their differences centred on personality, ego and ambition. Astaire was a dancer and a singer, while Rogers was an actress who, in spite of her lack of professional training, could dance. By the time they made their final film, The Barclays of Broadway, a 1949 MGM film, which was supposed to have starred Judy Garland, who was too ill to perform, Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers seemed as finely matched as ever, but it was to be their last film, not compromise. No, sir, what's more, if he thinks of something better after you've finished a routine, you do it over. Yes, it was a partnership that wouldn't have happened if Astaire had had his way. following their debut performance in The Gay Divorcee for RKO Studios, he wrote to his agent to try to prevent it happening again. "I'd rather not make any more pictures for radio, RKO, if I have to be teamed up with one of those movie queens." He clearly saw Rogers and her ilk as being beneath him, and in this snobbish view he was undoubtedly encouraged by his socialite wife Phyllis, who was jealous of his partners. "She never warmed up to me," wrote Rogers in her autobiography, "and she surely didn't want her husband to either." Fred said he could stand mushy love scenes and felt like a fool kissing for the camera. "Frankly, I think Phyllis didn't want him kissing other women." What Astaire had failed to understand was that Rogers was his perfect partner because she could dance and act at the same time, which made him look even better. Another issue that he had with Rogers was her choice of costume. He was the perfect shape for black tie and tails, his customary dancing outfit. She required a variety of dresses and suits. His perfectionism reached levels of control freakery when he was confronted with her outfit in top hat for the dance sequence Cheek to Cheek. She chose a dress covered in blue ostrich feathers, which Astaire, backed up by Phyllis, "She looks like a rooster," hated. When the director asked her to change it, Rogers called in her mother for support, who said, "Why don't you just get another girl?" Accounts of the dress in action vary wildly between Astaire and Rogers. In her version, a few feathers flew off and stuck to his jacket. Astaire wrote, "Feathers started to fly as if a chicken had been attacked by a coyote. It was like a snowstorm." Although they rarely confessed their dislike for each other in public, even in their autobiographies, it is not hard to tell from omissions and coded comments how they felt. Rogers recalled when his hat fell off while filming Top Hat, revealing he had forgotten to wear his toupee. He compliments the dancing of Powell and Hayworth far more than that of his best-known partner. She would go on to co-star in 9 movies with him over 6 years, as RKO milked a winning formula with titles like Swing Time, Finally Free and Flying Solo. Rogers triumphed, winning the Best Actress Oscar for the drama Kitty Foyle. She then sustained her solo film career throughout the decade and into the next, becoming one of the most highly paid actresses in Hollywood. Like many female stars of the day, she found good movie roles harder to come by as she approached middle age. Throughout the 50s she stayed busy, but none of her movies over this period matched her previous work. Then in 1965 she made a splashy comeback on Broadway, replacing Carol Channing in Hello, Dolly. That same year she also appeared as the Queen in the TV version of Cinderella and in Harlow, playing Jean Harlow's mother. She must have related to the role of a strong stage mother devoted to Christian Science. 4 years later, Ginger scored on London's West End in an acclaimed production of Mame. After that she did the occasional guest TV spot, and fulfilling a long-time wish, also directed an off-Broadway production of Babes in Arms in 1985. Unbeknownst to many, Rogers was a diabetic, but her belief in Christian Science meant that her last husband, William Marshall, had to trick her into taking insulin shots, saying they were vitamin injections. In April 1995 she finally lapsed into a diabetic coma, then suffered a fatal stroke. She was 83. Married and divorced 5 times, including a 6-year union to actor Lou Ayres, in the 30s, Ginger Rogers devoted her life to becoming and remaining a star. As her career progressed, she fought hard for equal treatment and pay, and worked tirelessly to develop her craft and extend her range. In the end, she proved to the world that she was much more than Fred Astaire's dance partner, though that might have been enough for most people. Later in life, Astaire was asked who his favourite dance partner was. He replied, "Excuse me, I must say Ginger was certainly the one. You know, the most effective partner I ever had. Everyone knows that was a whole other thing, what we did. I just want to pay a tribute to Ginger, because we did so many pictures together, and believe me, it was a value to have that girl. She had it. She was just great." Yet the knowledge that they were not as smitten with each other in real life as they appeared to be on screen doesn't diminish their achievement. It heightens our admiration by revealing the stratospheric professionalism of 2 mismatched people whose legacy is unassailable. By 1995, after spending a lifetime resisting treatment for her diabetes, Ginger Rogers passed away. But when it comes to her cause of death, there are some conflicting theories. While most sources state that she died of natural causes, others believe that a diabetic coma initiated her rapid decline. In the end, one thing was certain: the world had lost an absolute icon. If you liked this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, subscribe if you are new here, and if you want to support my work, please visit my Patreon page. Now it is your turn. What do you think about the relationship between Ginger Rogers and Fred Astaire? After all, Ginger Rogers and Fred Astaire were a match made in heaven.